So a lot of people say they don't like the fantasy genre because it has no stakes, no drama, because you can just kind of make up whatever you want because, you know, it's fantasy, so magic. A lot of people say the same thing about comic book movies and comic books in general, my mother being one of them, but I think it's because they don't quite understand story structure, the genre itself, or basic world building. Hi, I'm Matt, and once a week I break down world building techniques, tricks, and tips, usually by building a world on the fly. But this week we're going to do our second ever case study looking at Doctor Strange 2 and the Multiverse of Madness, and seeing how this movie that, as the recording of this, has earned $200 million in just 1 week, how it did all this in a comic book movie with not one but 3 magic systems. Since we're discussing a movie that's been out for only a week, there's going to be some spoilers. I'm looking at the world building, not the plot itself, but I will have to mention a lot of plot things. So if you haven't seen it yet, I would turn this off or put your fingers in your ears and say nah, 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 nah for a while, though that'd be kind of weird. Anyways, let's get to work. So when I started doing this episode, I thought it was going to be real short, and it was all based on a conversation I had with Dao Wong, who's a System Apocalypse, about why they, as he put it, did Wanda dirty. That's the big main spoiler. If you've watched it, you know what I'm talking about. Wanda is the villain in this. I hope you had your fingers in your ears for that. Anyways, we're going to look at why this was done and kind of why they had to write her out, and that all starts with magic systems, which is what we've been examining a lot lately, particularly with my AALC magic systems. Just a short version of that. There's basically a continuum based on Sanderson's laws, going from soft magic systems to hardest magic systems, which are cost, with a little bit of one on the end there. And they're soft to hard based on how much they can affect the plot, how much they can resolve the conflict of the plot itself, with the green ones, the soft ones, being more about character, and as it travels down that wonderful continuum, more of how they can affect the plot itself. That's all based on, did I say Sanderson's second law? Because it's really the first law, that the more the audience understands, i.e. the harder the magic system, the more it can resolve the plot. All right. But oddly enough, because as you pointed out, the soft systems are all kind of character-based, it's kind of interesting that we're going to break out the 3 magic systems based on the characters themselves. And we're going to start with America Chavez, and she was kind of I would say a minor character in this, even though she was kind of the MacGuffin in it. And it is, her power was to, punch through the multiverse and to go to other dimensions, other versions of reality. And you might actually say that this was a soft level static because she had 1 power and it didn't really change, but I'm going to actually point out and say that it was a soft hero incomplete. And that's way, way back on the soft section of the continuum. And I think it was that instead of like a single power, like so Wolverine's hero, soft incomplete, is a good example of soft hero incomplete, as in he has a healing factor. It is the same healing factor. It's his sense of smell. It is the same sense of smell throughout. It's just how he uses it. Same thing, her power didn't really change. Well, that's not true. It did change by the end. But at first it was an impediment. It was something that kept getting in her way. It made their lives more difficult. It would show up in the right second to save them, sort of chosen one-esque, but for the most part, she couldn't control it, and that became a plot point. In fact, it became her character arc. So, though it started as soft hero incomplete, as in she can't understand it, the film ended with a soft hero complete, as in he said, you've had the power within you all along, so could have been chosen one. She accepts it, she accepts herself, she has mastery over her power, and as such is able to use it in the finale. And we don't really get too mad. In the epilogue, we see her, she's now hardening the power, and then she's learning real magic, so, it's hardened, it fills the character arc of the soft hero complete. But interestingly enough, because it was a soft hero incomplete, she worked as a MacGuffin, which is again the object that everyone is after in the plot. The Maltese Falcon, the Lost Ark, look up MacGuffin, it's kind of interesting. So we bring up MacGuffin now because that's going to come into play later. Our second character magician to look at and magic system is Doctor Strange himself and all of his cohorts, Wong and such. And they are a soft level advancing with a cost fluctuation. So those are much, much harder on the far right of the scale. These are things that they can resolve the conflict. We also have a little bit of like a soft static power. His cloak, for instance, as in it has, kind of 1 power, it floats and does things. It can fly, it can, it's sentient. So that one's kind of a weird one, but it does its one thing. And it does it cleverly, which is a really big thing because it's a level system, and level systems are based all upon the clever use of the magic itself, based on Sanderson's second law. Hopefully there's a footnote up here if you want to review Sanderson's second law and leveling systems in general. His magic, which we saw with all the da-da-da gestures, pretty cool. I wonder how often Cumberbatch had to practice this. Kind of fun. Obviously more than I did because he made it look good. This is a hard advancing magic that they are taught these types of powers. Harry Potter is a great example of this because they're taught these very specific spells, several set of spells per year, and they're getting more and more powerful as time goes on. Strange and all of his cohorts who are taught magic, it's the same thing. They are taught spells, they are taught abilities, and once they are taught, they are unlocked. This is one of the things to look for if the ability is unlocked and then can be used unlimited. We see that with Strange. Once he has his powers, once he understands them, he can go voop, 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 and just as long as he can gesture, he can make these powers happen. Part of the reason that he is so powerful, as they said in the first Strange movie, is he has a photographic memory, so that's why he was able to plow through all the books and learn so quickly, is because he was unlocked. This is a hack that is a lot of talked about in progression magic. In progression fantasy, there's usually a hack that the character has that's why they get so powerful so quickly. Anyways, again, to show that this is a hard advancing magic system, level magic system. There were rules for this spinner that he had. I can make portals as long as I have this thing on my finger, take it away, a la Spider-Man, and then I'm get stuck somewhere. And then, the mirror dimension, there are rules to it. One of the things that makes it a leveling magic system is the clever use of their abilities, which we see in the first Strange movie, where he realizes he has this time spell. It's really, really powerful, even though that is a cost system, and we'll get to in a second. But he uses it cleverly and just tortures Dormammu by repeating the same moment over and over, because Dormammu doesn't experience time, so he just tortures him with time. So it's a clever use of time instead of just being more powerful. He's fighting a more powerful foe. Let's keep that one in mind for later too. And has to use his power cleverly. Same way that when he gives up the Time Stone in the Avengers Infinity, the first part of the last Avengers movie. Anyways, where he gives up the stone to Thanos, and everyone's like, this is crazy, what? Well, there was actually a plan to it, and he was using it clever because it was the one chance they had. Okay, so Strange also has a cost fluctuating system, as in there is things that he can do to be more powerful when he needs to. Also know that there is a moral cost. That's in the first movie. The Ancient One, spoiler alert, has used the dark magic at some point in time. There's the forbidden section they don't go to, just like Harry Potter, in the library that you're not allowed to get from. Mad Mikkelsen's bad guy character, whose name I don't remember at all, even though he's a very, very great villain actor. Don't remember his character name, which means he's just really great at being a villain. Anywho, he's used the dark magic, so moral cost that goes with using certain magics, not allowed to have it, moral cost. And by stepping across the line, as Strange does in this movie, there will be repercussions because of it. Also, there's a cost system, as in there's power jumps versus via impediments. Hopefully there's a footnote up if you want to review cost systems and see what power jump via impediments is. But basically, he has to go get a specific object or have a thing that will make him more powerful to solve the problem, resolve the conflict with his magic. This means it's a MacGuffin, something that he needs and needs to spend time, energy, and effort to get to make himself more powerful to resolve the conflict. Though Doctor Strange is interesting because he has no upper limit in his power as far as we know it as the viewing audience. And his powers are ill-defined. What can he magic? I mean, at sometimes he can, with a proper MacGuffin, can erase the memory of everyone on Earth. Like, what? And that took like a 3-minute spell for Spider-Man. Like, what? That is way too powerful. The plot needed him to do it. He had this thing. What if he applied it to other stuff? That's too much power for a character to have, especially when it's a hero. So that's where the interesting thing is of what do you do with a character who is such ill-defined powers and they're so powerful, so no upper limit. Well, you use them as a foil. You make them a soft villain, which, back to the thing, is way, way on the end. This is the example from the Emperor, as in, he pulls, force lightning out of nowhere. He comes back from the dead. Well, why can he do that? Because he's the villain and he makes the heroes' lives more difficult, so we don't mind giving them ill-defined powers. We see this with Doctor Strange in Thor, like Thor 3 when he shows up and is just kind of messing with Thor, and Loki, he sends Loki like falling for 30 minutes. Like, those are some really powerful things to do to a god. Yet he does it, and we're okay with it because it's not his movie. He's acting as a foil to them. Same thing in Spider-Man Through the Multiverse, or whatever it's called, Went Away Home again, so Homebound, anyways, where, you know, he starts off helping Peter, makes the spell, but when it breaks down, he's trying to stop Peter from, you know, making moral choices, and, you know, so he's a villain suddenly. He's a foil in someone else's movie. So, okay, fine, then he has no upper limits. Again, we see Peter as Spider-Man defeating a much, much more powerful villain by being clever and using webs and geometry to defeat Strange, who is really, really powerful because, again, foil. The other option for a really powerful character with ill-defined abilities is the old anti-hero trick. And this comes from writing in general, like, oh, I have an anti-hero. Well, they're really hard to be empathetic with, being anti-hero-esque, doing bad things. How do you make the audience bond with them? Well, the trick is, if you're going to make your hero bad, here's good, here's, you know, your hero is on this side of good. Well, you make your villain really, really, really bad, so that they seem, so your anti-hero seems good by comparison. No Country for Old Men is a good example for this. Hannibal Lecter and all those, like, yeah, he's a guy who eats dudes, yeah, but look at the people he's helping hunt down, so, you know, that's great. And you can twist this a little bit by making your villain much, much worse and much, much more powerful if your hero is really powerful. Thanos, great example in the Avengers movie. Like, he's been teased for I don't know how many years. He finally shows up, and in the first 5 minutes, he beats a full Hulk. He just kind of shrugs him off. Like, boom, this establishes that you don't mess with this guy. He is super, super powerful. As such, all of our heroes got to be at full strength and fight him, you know, because he and his cohorts were so incredibly powerful. So that's kind of the anti-hero trick of, if you need your hero with ill-defined powers, no upper limit, just make your bad guy so much more powerful, which takes us to Wanda. So she is the villain in Strange 2, and this is what kind of inspired this whole thing, is I think they had to make her this because her powers were so nebulous and they were no upper limit. This is what I was discussing with Dow, and which, you know, again, inspired all this. So let's trace her evolution really quick. How she showed up in the movies themselves. I am a huge comic book fan, but I always stayed in the X-Men mutant side of the Marvel pool, so I'm not drawing from any of that other than kind of base information from her. We're looking at just the films themselves because this is what most people are having their contact with, and for them is the canon. She shows up as the villain in Avengers 2, Ultron, and her power is like to mess with people's minds and to move stuff with her mind. That's pretty much all they said that she can do. She was basically she was basically soft villain. We knew she could do stuff, she messed with them, but we didn't really know what it was that she could do. Jump into Captain America 3, she shows up, she's had her arc, and you know, she's more powerful, but not much, not really super, like, you know, she moves the explosion, but she's kind of more the MacGuffin in this because, you know, it's still window dressing, because she causes the conflict and she doesn't really resolve it. She's just kind of there. People are fighting for her because of her. So still on the soft side of things. Now we have a huge jump in power for her when she shows up in the first of the Avenger two-part Infinity Wars, Infinity Gauntlet, or whatever the movies are, the Infinity ones. I'm sorry, I don't actually remember their names and I don't have enough time to look them up. Anyways, in that one, she destroys a Infinity Stone. Like, what? We've just been saying how powerful these things are, how unstoppable you are if you have them, and she just flat out destroys one of them. How? How did she get this huge jump? Well, it's kind of a cost system for the fact that there was a moral / you know, emotional toll that was done to her because she had to kill the Vision to do it. So we kind of explain away her huge jump in powers. Also, it's a character arc, and then, you know, they love each other, but she has to do this for the right, you know, as we've seen what a hero she can be, and that she will make sacrifices. So we're still kind of in the soft system here. Like, she has always been soft with like a slight, you know, with a slight cost at one point, and that's because they never bother to define what her powers are. They're just chaos magic, which I don't think they even call it to that till later. She could just bend reality. So then we jump to WandaVision, where suddenly we have another huge power jump. I guess it's not that huge after the Power Stone, where she resurrects Vision and like enslaves this entire town. And there's even a point where the witch in it, Tabitha, I want to say, I'm sorry I didn't look that one up either, is saying like, how did you get so powerful? You're doing all these things. People are running your programs like off in the distance. Like, this is impossible. You shouldn't be able to do this. And then that's where they bring in the concept of the Scarlet Witch. And anyways, huge power jump. How and why do they get away with it? Because it's still window dressing. It is not about how powerful she is at this point. It is all about her character arc and about her dealing with grief through television, which was kind of brilliant in its own way. Like each of the episodes, I have to say, hats off to that season, that miniseries, whatever it was. But again, it was all about her coming to terms with her grief. And so it was a character arc moment still in the soft section. They did bring in runes in that one. I did not remember that, or the Darkhold, which was mentioned in Strange 2. I went back and rewatched those episodes like, oh, you did seed that information. It is there within the Marvel lore of the universe itself. Good on you. She did what's clever when she used the runes against Tabitha and the Darkhold. Anyways, so final part of her evolution, Strange 2. She is the villain. Like, boom, she comes pretty much out the gate as the villainess, and much like Thanos, we see her just wreck stuff. She just comes in and just clears the ground with all the mages, not just Strange and Wong, but boom, she is just decimating everybody. She is clearly a villain now, soft villain. Like, okay, she has a Darkhold, so it's kind of a cost fluctuating, but she's still a soft villain. It's just that we're using the Darkhold as a MacGuffin later in the book when it's destroyed, later in the story when it's destroyed and she has to go find it again. Also, she has a MacGuffin in trying to find America. So again, anti-hero trick, soft villain, superpower jump, and this is kind of necessary for the characteress herself, for the character herself. Because what do they do with her? Suddenly you have this character who can change reality, just warp everything. She's just got, what do you do with Wanda? Well, you're either going to have to depower her, which we're going to look at in just a second with Thor, or you just shelf her because you can't just have a god character walking around all the time unless they are a villain. That's why they made her a villain, because that was something they could do with her. They could put her over there based on her powers, and they could give her some sort of a redemption arc while keeping the stories themselves valid, by keeping stakes, without having a character that you can just go to fix stuff with their magic all the time. She had to be a villain in this story, and they had to write her out, and it was nice of them to give her a character arc because they really didn't need to, but it was the only way to deal with her character that was way too powerful without taking him off the board. Dow and I were discussing this, and he referred to this as a Superman problem, which again goes to the one of the things Sanderson said in his second law. Superman's boring. Like, he has the power for everything. Like, give me someone with limitations like Batman. That's much more interesting. Let's look at the corollary to that, and that is Thor. And he is a god. He has super power. He should be able to ruin everything, anyone in his path. He's super powerful. So that's why they spend so much time depowering Thor in all of his movies. His first movie, he shows up, they take away his hammer. He has to arc to get it back and gain his power. Great, origin story. Same sort of thing they do with Captain Marvel. She earns her power with Wonder Woman movie. Like, she earns her power in the first one by a character arc. But then what do you do with him at that? Second Thor movie, he was full power the whole time, and it wasn't great. They tried to make a villain that was more powerful to offset it, the anti-hero trick. Didn't really work. Most people think that is the weakest of the Thor movie. Boom, let's jump to the third Thor movie. What do? We take away his hammer. He has to arc to find himself, work with the team, discover this power within, which is lightning. So again, another character arc. Second Avengers movie, first Avengers movie, it's fine, he's full power. They use that to, actually, he's not at full power. Now I think about it, Thanos just steamrolls him. He earns a new axe, character arc to get new axe, sacrifices, uses it to defeat Thanos. What do? We depower him. Fat Thor. Boom. And I don't know what the fourth movie is going to be like yet. It's coming out soon, but it looks again about Thor finding himself and having to confront himself with female Thor, who now has his original thing. So depowering the character when they're too strong. That is one of the options right there. And it's just something to keep in mind. Strange, they're kind of doing that with him, where they lost the Mantle of Sorcerer Supreme and he lost the Time Stone. Are they trying to keep him in check, even though he can still, wipe the mind of the universe? This is something to keep in mind of what they are going to do with him. Captain Marvel, another good example of, let's look to see if they're going to depower her, defang her, if you will, or is she kind of be kind of boring, i.e. this with Thor in the second movie, where like, oh, let's just make the bad guy more powerful. Doesn't always work unless you've built up that bad guy. So yeah, keep all of that in mind. Keep the powers, the magic systems, keep that all in mind with what you can do with your hero. And and if you make them too powerful, too nebulous, you might have to either figure out how to nerf them, defang them, or turn them into a villain. Hopefully you don't need to do that or want to, but if you do, now you know how. Hope you enjoyed that. Yeah, hope you can use it to build some better magic systems and some better worlds.